Hello and welcome to Ebenezer Show. Thank you for choosing to spend part of your morning with us. Have you ever wondered what happens when a pastor is in need of pastoral care? When either as an individual, in his relationship, in his family, he's going through situations and could use support on supporting and helping pastors. Jerry will tell us more about that. Before he comes, I want to we've been looking at the first chapters of the book of Samuel. And today I'm looking at chapter 2. We read this chapter earlier. I'm reading it again. Verse 22. It reads, "Now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they slept with the women who served at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So he said to them, 'Why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. No, my sons, the report I hear spreading among the Lord's people is not good.' He rebuked his sons. He showed his sons that it was a displeasure what they were doing to him as the father and to God. Sadly, the sons did not listen. They did not change in their ways, and eventually they met their death. The hope is always in families that parents have ways of engaging their children when they encounter challenges, situations that are beyond them. But yes, time comes that even the best efforts of parents does not produce the kind of results that is expected. However, we can say this would have been a typical time when Eli and his family would have needed support and assistance. Eli must have felt broken and sad that he did not have influence in the lives of his children. In my book, Beneath the Cracks, chapter 6, I open with a situation that was stressful enough, difficult enough, that it had a potential to break me. That was a steep fall into the crack. However, thank God, that experience that nearly broke me brought about the book Beneath the Cracks. All things work. God works all things for good. And I processed that information, thanking God that following that fall, I found myself where I am today, providing spiritual care in healthcare setting, providing training and education for many people who are preparing for ordained ministry. And one thing I remind students all the time, self-care is very important. Accessing care is very important. Both your own ways of accessing care, but also the one that's put in place with the organization that you serve in. And that's how I encountered Dr. Jerry Tom, who came to take one of those programs. And I learned about his extensive ministry, helping and supporting pastors. I'm inviting Dr. Jerry, and then for the first part of the conversation, and then we'll meet both Jerry and his wife Elaine in the second part. I will see you after the break. Ebenezer. Welcome back, viewers. I mentioned that as we come back, I'm bringing a dear minister, a colleague, and a mentor and a leader in the ministry. More importantly, in the front line, Dr. Jerry Ton and Elaine, they're in the front line of reaching out, supporting, providing resources to pastors. Welcome, Dr. Jerry Ton.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
I'm really honored that we'll get to know you. We'll get to know something about your ministry that spans several years and get some wisdom from your years of ministry experience. But today we just want to know, who is Jerry Tom?
Oh, well, that's a long story because I'm getting older, Dr. Florence. But I had the privilege and honor of growing up in a Christian home. Mm-hmm. And at 12 years of age, I gave my life to Christ, which was kind of transformational for me personally. And then I pursued I got involved in leadership later on. I remember I was 17 and years of age, and asked to teach the high school Sunday school class. And I myself was just a high school student. That was quite quite an experience.
Wow.
So at 17 years of age, I was teaching the church high school class, which was very, I guess it was within the confines of the sovereignty of God. And I ended up going to Bible college, getting married to Elaine, who you will meet the next time.
We look forward to meeting Elaine.
Her dad was the lead pastor of the church where I grew up. And so I ended up marrying her. We started working together in youth ministry and leadership. And then she went to Bible college. She was, of course, Florence, the smart one. She was valedictorian in the school. And I was just honored to be able to be a part of her life. And we ended up getting married in actually 1982. So this year is our 40th anniversary coming up.
That's lovely. That makes us want to meet Elaine even more, but we can wait. We can wait when her schedule will accommodate.
Yeah. And when I started off working with youth in Hamilton, Ontario, and then I went to Scarborough, and I was in a church in Scarborough on staff, and I started to realize I don't have the tools in the toolbox to deal with all of the ministerial issues that come up in a church. I mean, crisis issues, grief issues, sometimes even trauma issues. I had no idea what to do.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I decided to do my master's degree in counseling. And I actually enrolled at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, and in their counseling program, and got my Master of Arts degree in counseling. And that was very, very helpful because I did it by extension, so I could continue to pastor. But it was very, very helpful in that all of a sudden I got some tools in the toolbox. I remember studying family systems, for instance, right? And then that's why that person is doing what they're doing. It was like, oh, now I get it, right?
Yeah, some of your understanding, a very important skill to learn. And in many times, we don't have the opportunity, as people train as pastors, focus sometimes is on theology and the Bible, and sometimes not on those additional skills and tools.
Right.
So, what exactly led you to take that route?
Sorry, what was that?
When you decided to enroll in masters in counseling, was there what influenced your decision at the time?
Thank you. Great question. So on one hand, I had the complexity of how do I deal with people that are in grief and loss. On the other hand, I was actually working through some of my own stuff personally that kind of surfaced. Unfortunately, I worked with some people where it was sometimes difficult relationally. And I ended up going for counseling myself. And at least two people were two counselors were quite influential in my life. First I built a friendship with them, and then I went to them, and I said, wow, like the way they handled these issues in my own personal life is so intriguing. I want to learn more about that. So I think it was sort of a combination of I don't have enough skills in my skill set, and as well these people who influenced my life. Two in particular, actually. Yeah, two people. Yeah.
That's interesting. I encountered you. I met you, I can say, sometime last year, but it feels like I've known you longer. We have parallel ministries.
Yes.
How has the training and the life experience contributed to your ministry over the years and currently the way you continue to minister?
Well, what ended up happening was once I felt more confident and comfortable in pastoral care, I was able to deal with issues Liberty was very, very good in terms of learning counseling skills. And I was able to deal with issues in the church. And some of my leaders over time began to recognize that. It was about, I'm guessing right now, the year would have been 97, 96, maybe 1996. I was serving in the Eastern Ontario district of our denomination.
Uh-huh.
And the superintendent at the time asked me to take on a role of helping a pastor who was in crisis, him and his wife. So Elaine and I got involved in that. And it was a pretty serious crisis. I'm still, it was God who intervened, but I used my counseling skills as well, and that marriage was saved.
Thank God, thank God.
And
a win.
And so when some of my leadership began to recognize, oh, maybe, Jerry is maybe a guy we can use. And Elaine, actually, I always did it with my wife, Elaine. We can use them as a team. And so I got more involved. And then when I switched districts because in Ontario, there's like an Eastern district
and Western. Yes.
And as soon as I switched districts, almost immediately, the same, like immediately, the superintendent got a hold of me and said, Jerry, would you serve on the restoration committee? And that was like a pretty immediate event. And so we came to the Western District and started in 2007. And so I served on the committee, and we dealt with a number of crisis issues in the ministry. And then within about 3 years of me serving in that capacity, or 4, they asked me to take over the chairmanship or the leadership role. And I have a team with me, and I've been in that ever since. But then about a year and a half ago, my superintendent, and you know him, Laurie Gibbons, Pastor Laurie, said, Jerry, would you also deal with crisis issues with pastors just across the board, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that was already 2 years ago. So deal with crisis issues, all crisis issues. I used to just deal with restoration, but he said, would you do that? And I got involved in doing that.
That one, to me, it's a great testimony. Now, Jerry, pandemic has been with us for 2 years.
Yes.
How have your ministry continued during the pandemic? How have you been able to still reach out? During the pandemic, it also has been a period of burnout and stress for many people. And pastors are not immune. How have you continued with that ministry?
So I've done a lot on Zoom, believe it or not. So Zoom is a brand new it's not a new invention, but it sure has been a great strength for us. And then when we can, I've also met privately with pastors, but and phone calling is another way that I have dealt with it. The ministry has continued because pastors will call me, often initiated by telephone conversations. There may be some kind of crisis issue that they are personally working through. And then I just get involved in encouragement. I've had a number of, this is interesting, a number of children education CE pastors call me. Ironically enough, because the pandemic has really messed kids programs up.
It has, yes.
Especially when COVID really exploded, right? In 2020. And they had all kinds of issues going on. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't run kids ministries. Are they going to have a job or not have a job?
Exactly. All
this kind of stuff so they would call me, and I would encourage them and talk to them. And sometimes I also have a list of psychotherapists that I work with the denomination. And sometimes Not always, but what on occasion I would refer them to a psychotherapist if the anxiety was high, right?
A helpful strategy to help people, but also know resources where you can refer and connect them. Now,
Right.
Jerry, you mentioned something that I said was a typical Ebenezer moment, ministry-wise. I wonder if you have an Ebenezer moment in your life, something that stands out. It can be in your life, in your family, an Ebenezer moment.
Okay, obviously, I would, when it comes to say mental health, emotional health, of course, I could talk about the greatest joy for me is that my kids know Jesus, and obviously, my grandkids are in the church.
Thank God.
Yeah, I think what was a turning moment for me, was emotionally and spiritually, and especially within the arena of mental health, is when I started working in the ministry back in the 1980s. And I don't know if, Florence, if you can remember back a few years ago. I don't know how it was in Kenya, but in Canada, you didn't talk about anything that had to do with mental health. You would just took it to God and you kept it to yourself.
Yes.
I don't know.
That is internationally. For those years, that is how it was. Yeah.
And so I remember working with a man who was very emotionally abusive. All right. Amazing. There were so many stories. If Elaine was here, she has even more passion on some of these things than I have, but and really not knowing what to do, right? Going into depression. I was going into a state of depression. I would have been in my early 20s. And then just finding this friend who ended up getting his PhD and going up in high levels of Canadian government, actually, in Ottawa. And he was he was a psychotherapist, but he became a psychologist. Great Christian brother who began through talk therapy, talking me through what I was experiencing. And I remember never having had somebody like that in my life. Now, I had family that I could talk to, great uncles and aunts, and you know what I mean, but he just was on another level. And I began and he began to unpack stuff in my life. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you. That is, God provides in our times of need. And in turn, he uses us from the lessons we have learned and experiences to be channels of his provision to others. Now, as we come to a close, I wonder what it would be your prayer request or your hopes in the next steps in your ministry, pastors.
Well, I'm here to give a testimony to God. Last year, I do seminars, right, on mental health, primarily on behalf of the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Florence, I think you experienced
I've been in your class.
Yeah. And last year, I was just doing a summary. We had 47 days of seminars that we did across Canada. God is just, lots of people have been asking me, can I do a seminar? I'm doing one this weekend again. So I guess my request is, I really want to help the church understand, and I think we're getting there. It's becoming more evident. I teach undergrads as well, and they get it, especially the Gen Zers. They're starting to get it, the millennials.
Good for them.
This integrated approach, right? I was just sharing this in class. If you got 1 minute, this is kind of the thing is, we need to understand the presence of God in everything and the fall of man, right? That separates the fall of man. That separates Christian counseling from secular.
Thank you for mentioning that. I have a feeling we'll want to know more about that. You'll unpack that a little more to help us understand. There are many pastors sometimes who may not even want to mention the word psychotherapy or therapy or counseling. It feels like that doesn't belong within the household of God.
Yeah.
It's great to hear these things, especially when we are not in crisis, when
Right.
we are in a place where we can process them well, so that when we are in crisis, we can make use of those resources, those channels, those individuals, those professionals who are trained in that area. Thank you for making time today, Dr. Jerryton. I look forward to having a conversation with you again, and Elaine, and we thank God for the ministry that you have with God's people.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Welcome back and thank you for sticking around. We are coming to a close of this episode, and we are glad that you've chosen to watch this episode. I looked at care for the pastors. How do pastors and ministers and other people in front line of either church or parachurch organizations, serving within the walls of the church or without, serving in those organizations that cater for human beings' soul and spirit, whether it's any discipline, counseling, or education, there are those schools and organizations that are faith-based. So they care for people, not just physical needs or educational needs, but also spiritual needs. Those in the front line of caring for humanity's whole being, where and how do they get their support when they need to? In addition to what organizations have in place, including employee assistance program. For the faith organization I worked in, there was a pastor, someone who people can call and talk to and pray with. But there are times that even with those resources in place, even with those supports and structures, situations can overtake someone. A pastor can find themselves experiencing compassion fatigue. And that's a state where they would still want to help, they will still want to extend themselves and help, but it's possible when they are overextended that it will put weight on them, on their life, it will put weight on their relationship, and it will put weight on their family. And they'll find themselves not functioning at their optimum as a spouse, as a parent, and in other places of their immediate networks and connections. We talked with Dr. Reverend Jerry Ton as he introduced his ministry, Get Care Canada, pastoral care for pastors. It's so extensive. He'll be back to tell us more about that. But in particular, we listened to him as he talked about the influence. What led him to make this decision in a period in life when he benefited from having a mentor, someone come alongside him during a difficult moment. And that person who was present for him influenced his decision to desire to be present for others, to explore and get further education in pastoral counseling, to continue giving that kind of care to pastors and ministers as needed. I hope if any of you watching today find yourself in full-time ministry, caring for people, supporting people, to remember that you're also a person, a wounded healer. You bring that care and healing to people, not because you are whole and complete and have it all together, but it's in obedience to what God is telling you and where God is leading you. And also in faith that the same God is sustaining you. He's meeting your needs, your emotional needs, your spiritual needs, your physical needs, your financial needs, all the needs that you have. God has provided in His church people for that purpose. Both people for the spiritual growth and maturity of members, people for the spiritual growth and maturity of leaders, and people for just being people, so that you can also have some social interaction. People you can depend on and trust and confide in and go play golf or go fishing or laugh with and just be human sometimes. Thank you for spending your time with us today. I hope the rest of your week is gentle and on a good pace. And should you be someone at this point, be it a pastor or a member, or none of the above, who is going through one of those stressors in life, those challenges that every now and then we encounter as human beings, I hope within your network, within your community, there are resources, there are structures and supports that you can access. You can pray with people in your circle of influence, circle of care, within your family, and that you'll find a way to navigate the situation and come out victorious. Take some time and share your stories. Stories build us, stories encourage us, stories inspire us, stories inform us. Share your stories with people in your family, people in your network, acquaintances, and lay your stone of help. In Ebenezer, that's what we endeavor to do. To create platform for voices that will bring stories that we can relate with, because we are common humanity. Have a gentle week. Ebenezer.